Roborock is the best-selling brand on Amazon, and today I bought 8 to see which is best. Because the Q5 didn't do worse, but honestly, compared to other brands, it still did much better and left a little bit of cornflakes and flour, so it goes to C. Then we have the ones that sucked up the most of it, but when I lifted them up, it had quite a bit underneath with the Qrevo S and the S8 MaxV, which is the most expensive one, but if we look at the flour, it basically got it all. Then we have the Qvero Pro, the Q8, which did the same but slightly less cornflakes on the left. So they all go in B. And the third place is Qrevo Plus with a smidge of flour and exactly 1 cornflake. And the second place, the S8 Pro, all the flour and a tiny bit of oatmeal left. And lastly, number 1 is Q7 with a smidge of flour left behind. Maybe the smaller opening from having a single brush caused more suction. We'll see more in features, but none of the top 3 completely cleaned the floor, so all are in A. Now let's see the best for suction area, battery life, dustbin capacity, and spoilers, this will favor budget ones because we don't factor in the extra features of the dock, which gets its own category later on. Let's start with the dustbin capacity, with the highest by a mile with a Q5, then Q7, and last is Qrevo Plus. Some of these need to sacrifice dustbin for water tank capacity, like the Q7. Next, we have the battery life, and again, Q5 is first with Q8, and the rest are about the same. And then the surface area, which again, Q5, man, why is Q5 so good? But it's also tied with Q8, and both are double the second place. Crazy with the rest being similar. So now I add up the ranks from all 3 rounds, and these are the points. The lower, the better, and Q5 got a perfect score with Q8 coming in close. Then all the way at the bottom is Qrevo S and Qrevo Plus. And so this is the tier list for this round. On a side note, I didn't like that the S8 Pro had the charging port on the front because when it needs to wash the mop, it has to spin around back up. Once it's done, it's gotta spin around back up again to charge. It's just bad design. None of the other Roborocks had this problem, so if you're choosing between the S8 MaxV or the S8 Pro, get the MaxV. Let's rip the band-aid off and go over the one that did absolutely the worst. It's the Q lineup with Q5, Q7, and Q8 because they couldn't see either of the remotes, which makes sense as they aren't too expensive, but it also hit the box and the candle, which to remind you that candle is high enough for the top mounted LiDAR to see, so I guess they just didn't care because there wasn't much hesitation. So they are all in D. Next up, we have the Qrevo Plus and the Qrevo Pro. They both tried to avoid the box, and they did for many times, but ultimately both hit the 2 remotes pretty easily, but both managed to go around the candle. So the LiDAR was actually useful. 3 out of 4 targets hit, and both are in C. Then we have the S8 MaxV and Qrevo S. They both did similar. Both hit the 2 remotes, went around the candle, and again went around the box. Also, but it just barely clipped it, so I'll count that as 0.5 of a hit. So 2.5 out of 4 targets hit, which makes it a B-. And last, we have the definitive winner with S8 Pro. It immediately tried to go around the box and the candle, noticed that it couldn't, backed off, and hit the small remote and tried to avoid the big one, but hit it. So 2 out of 4 targets and a B. Now the section I'm personally excited for because I'm searching for a Robo Vacuum that can go below 50 dB. And spoilers, I did. This is the low noise graph, and out of the Roborocks, Qrevo Pro is the quietest. But not only that, all the Qrevo lines tend to be quieter, but not weaker because they did well in the Hardfloor test, while the Q5 is the loudest. Then we have the high noise. It was close between the Qrevo Pro and the Qrevo S. All the way up is the Q7. And keep in mind, all these tests were taken 20 inches from the vacuum with 35 dB dB as the room ambient noise level. And now we have the averages with Roborock Qvero Pro being first place, but it's so close to Qrevo S. And to me, I consider it an S if it can go below 50 on the average. So this was close, but not quite. So it goes in A+. Then we have the Qrevo Plus and the S8 MaxV at A. Then we have the S8 Pro and the Q8 right around 60 dB, so it's a B, and Q5 and Q7 are in C. I didn't give any of these a D because when I tested the Eufys, some of them averaged like 65 dB. Now that's a D. None of these are D. This will be an uphill battle, as I showed you in my other videos. Even a vacuum cleaner will take multiple passes to suck up all the flour. So even the best robo vacuum, the S8 MaxV, still couldn't get all the flour, but it didn't get all the oatmeal and the cornflakes, and the flour is the most transparent out of all the vacuums, which is similar to the S8 Pro. The flour is a bit more white, so it sucked up less, and left one cornflake, so it's very close. So both are an A+. Next is the Q5 and Q7. They are much cheaper and sucked up all the cornflakes and a lot of the flour, but left specks of oatmeal behind. So they are A. Then the Qvero Plus and the Qrevo S both did well in the flour and the oatmeal, but left a few cornflakes. And then the last place is Q8 and Qrevo Pro, which left a tiny bit more cornflake, a tiny bit more oatmeal, but it's not enough to push them off the same rank, so they are all going in B. Now we'll get the filter price and the dust bag price for yearly and then 5 years. Since the average lifespan of a robo vacuum is 4 to 6 years, and then include the robot vacuum price at the end to see which is the cheapest. Most brands recommend to change the dust bags every 2 months, so the yearly cost literally all the same, but the dust bag itself isn't. The Q7, Q5, Q8 all have 2.5 liters of capacity, while the Qrevo Plus, the S8 MaxV, etc. all have 2.7 liters. I'll go more in depth in the dock section later on. And the most brands recommend changing the filters 3 to 6 months. We'll do the middle, so 4.5 months. Qrevo Plus, the Qrevo S takes the lead, and the rest are like 3 cents off each other. And now we'll do the filter plus the dust bag cost for 5 years, and again, Qrevo Plus, Qvero S is first place. So now we add up the price from the robo vacuums to get a total cost for 5 years of ownership. And the cheapest is the Q5, with Q8 being not too far behind. Keep in mind, all these are without discount and from Roborock store itself, so you can get it from a second seller for cheaper. And all the rest are somewhat similar until you jump all the way to the 7th and 8th place, which is more than double the first place. You get a lot more features for the price, but we'll see if that's actually worth it. For now, the rankings are based off the final chart, and here is the tier list. Spoilers for the 5-inch, they all did okay to good because the brushes are all made from tangle-resistant rubber, but also none got 100%. And the first place is a 4-way tie, and as you can see in each, although it's mostly clear, none tangled on the brush, but just a few strands around and under the brush, and once I take it out, and under the brush once I take it off. And for each test, I put 2 strands vertically and 2 strands horizontally, and the second place is the Qrevo Plus, none on the brush, and when you lift it up, there's a thicker clump of hair under it. And the last place is our S8 MaxV, Qvero Pro, and Qrevo S. They are semi-coiled around the brush but falls off once I take off the brush, meaning if I have more time, maybe eventually it'll spin and suck it all up. But they all had the same amount of time, so no excuses. And now for the 10-inch. The first place is the Q7 and Q8 with maybe 1 strand of hair to the both of them. And then the Qrevo Plus with coiling around the brush but it's not too thick. Then Q5 with a little bit more as I pull them out, and Qrevo S with a bit more again. Then the S8 Pro now where the strands didn't separate and are still clumps, which is the same with the S8 MaxV, but even more so. And lastly, the Qrevo Pro, which doesn't even look like any hair got in the dustbin. And now I combine the scores for the both of them, and keep in mind the perfect score is 2. And that's what the Q8 and the Q7 got, so they are both in S. And then we have the Q5, Qrevo Plus in A, and then the S8 Pro in B, and then the Qrevo S in C. And the last place with 9 and 10 points, S8 Max and Qrevo Pro in D. How I determine the best stock is by looking at the dust bag, the clean water, the dirty water capacity, and then how loud it is when it empties and the extra features. So for the dust bag, there's a slight difference of 0.2 liters because these are made to fit inside a rectangular space while the smaller ones are just a box. Then for the clean and dirty tanks, Q5, Q7, Q8 doesn't have any, so 0, and the Qrevos have the highest, and then the S8 Pro. Now the dog noise, the lowest being the 70, which I can let you hear. Obviously not quiet at all, but when you compare it to the loudest, that was a Q8, and these you have to put in a corner because you won't be able to hear anything when you're near it. And lastly, the features. The Q5, Q7, Q8 doesn't really have any extra features, but all the Qrevo and the S8 Pro have self-mop cleaning, air drying, and auto-filling of the water inside the vacuum. But only the S8 MaxV has that, and also hot water mop washing and also auto detergent dispensing. So that's the winner for this round. So now I add up the points for all the rounds. The best you can get is 4, and the Qrevo Plus got pretty close, same with the Qrevo S, then all the way down at Q8, Q7, Q5. And here is the tier list for this round. Normally, I don't include the mopping in the rankings, but 7 out of the 8 vacuums had mops, so let's see which one's actually useless. Which are the 4 vacuums sharing last place because they barely did anything? The Qrevo Pro, the S8 Pro, the Q7, and Q8. All of them are just mopping with a pad, except the Qrevo Pro. Might be because it doesn't have enough downward pressure. Also keep in mind I use a half a teaspoon for each and test them on only 1 pass. Then we have the Qrevo S, the Qrevo Plus. They both actually got rid of some of the stains and made the whole thing a bit lighter. And lastly, the best was the S8 MaxV. It was doing well, but I didn't want it to linger on the stain too long and tamper with the results. So I pulled it off, and there are some spots that are just completely clean. And if I left it, and it probably would have gotten all of it, but this is just testing on its 1 pass. So not too bad, and here's the tier list for this round. And the best Roborock is the Qrevo Plus. I got this by creating different categories a Robo Vacuum needs to be good at, then added ranks for each category to get these points. And these are all the ranks. You can see the Qrevo Plus being great at Hardfloor, noise, hair detangling, and dock, with the last place being the Qrevo Pro. But not everybody cares about all these categories, so I'm going to give an essential recommendation by cutting out the fat and leaving Hardfloor, features, noise, carpet, and price. So the new number 1 is the Q5 Max, which is also our budget option, but it's still $450, so not exactly cheap, but it did beat the S8 MaxV, which is $1,800, so a bargain in comparison, which is also the last place for this round. And I heard you from the last video, nobody cares about noise that much, so I cut out that category and give the final points for these categories. And the final winner is the S8 MaxV, the most expensive one. No, not even close. It's last place with S8 Pro and Qrevo Pro, but the Q5 Max takes first place again. So check it out in the links in the description, and although it did well overall, it didn't do that good on the hard floor. All in all, when you look at the essential points, you'll see the cheaper ones generally did the best. But when we zoom out and look at the final points with all the categories, the cheaper ones still also did better. So it's not really about the cheaper ones having better value. They were just literally beating the expensive ones category by category. And if we take away the price from the essentials, Q5 is still the first place. That's crazy. With the S8 Pro close in second, but all the other less expensive ones still did much better than the most expensive ones. So either Roborock made their budget vacuums do really well, or they're slacking with the most expensive ones and they gotta just lock in. Well, that's it for today. This might be my last one for a little bit. So thank you for watching, and check out the links in the description to support this channel. And hopefully you found this video helpful. So bye for now. See ya. Sayonara. Ciao. Konnichiwa.